All right. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Pitchfork Podcast Live. We're doing things on TikTok this time. We're going to be doing some bad cop news live. So make sure you guys smash the like button. Make sure you guys are tapping the stream. Make sure you guys are sharing the stream. We're going to have a good time tonight. We're going to cover some piggies being very naughty tonight. Let's get into the story without further ado, man. Without further ado. And tonight was a very interesting night. Tonight was a very interesting night. Let me go back to the chat screen one more time. Tonight was a very interesting night because first of all, I want to put some music on the background, man. Because I can't just do without the music, man. Because again, when you get into these pigs, man, when you get into these bad oinkers, you really have to have something chill going on in the background, man, to keep yourself calm. See, cops, man, they just really try your patience, man. All right, here we go. So let's get into it, guys. Let's get into it. So, guys, we're gonna get into the bad cop news live. All right. So every day on my TikTok channel, if you average it out, for the amount of content I put out, I do bad cop news, and I cover a lot of bad cops, man. A lot of bad oinkers. I would say cops who commit crimes. So we're gonna get to some stories right now. Make sure you guys are smashing the like button. Make sure you guys are sharing the stream. For our first story tonight, we have an Alabama police officer who has been arrested for allegedly planting evidence. This man was not planting crops. The crops that he was planting was the crops of police corruption. You know, he was planting bad boy crops, villain crops. You know, man, oh man. Michael Kilgore, an Alabama police officer with the Central Police Department, has been arrested because he was unlawfully handling evidence. Translation: he was trying to frame somebody. Translation: this bad oinker here, this police officer here, this brave blue hero, this hero of the blue, he was planting evidence. Oh man. He was arrested Wednesday on charges of criminal conspiracy to commit a controlled substance crime distribution. The chief of Central Police Department, Kirk Blankenship, says, we are very disappointed in Kilgore's conduct. Oh man, there is no excuse for any officer violating the law like this. Oh man. Blue Lives Matter. I gotta ask you. Why does so many police officers plant evidence against citizens? I gotta ask you that question at this point. Why is it that we can't seem to trust people who wear badges? I mean, if there's essentially no difference between you and an average person, because again, people are gonna say, well, they're human too. They're human, and that's true. Police officers are human, and therefore, I don't understand. Therefore, why are they treated like they're superheroes? They are. I agree. They are human. So why are they treated like they're superheroes? I'm just curious. You know. It just seems to me like if you give anyone the amount of power the average officer has, they're gonna eventually either encourage this behavior or engage in it. I mean, there's really no two ways about it, right? Because stories like this becoming so common within the American news media, within the news cycles, within everything else, the fact that these stories are so common lets you know that it's the cockroach theory. And I don't mean cockroach theory in terms of spreading around. I mean cockroach theory as in when you see one, there's probably more. When you see one, there's probably more. This man's out here planting evidence, trying to frame somebody for something that they did not do. You know how many people are locked up every single day? Probably every single day, but certainly every month and every year. and how many people have been released out of incarceration based on false charges because of officers just like this? He's the one that got caught. I want you to hear that again. He's the one that got caught. There's no telling how many times this man has done this. There is no telling how many times this man has done this. There is no telling how many times this man has done this. You know, and the saddest part, you know, I wanna drive this point home. People like this are not an anomaly. They are the rule. I hope everyone watching gets this. Officers like this are not the anomaly. They are the rule. You see, I guarantee what happens with this officer is that now that there's so much scrutiny placed on police officers, that's the only reason why this guy is being outed or he upset someone. But as a general rule, officers of the law, for the most part, they cover for guys like this. They don't usually turn them in. I just want you to know that. I just want you to know that. Anyone who's ever worked in any kind of adjacent position to U.S. law enforcement, we all know that. We all know that. Let's get to the story here. So there's a story here of a police officer. I really wanted to cover this story, so I hope this is going to refresh properly. There we go. Cool. All right, so let's get into the story here. A Franklin police officer has been arrested after a warrant served for animal cruelty. This is police officer named Ryan Brown. Let's get into the story here.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, we want to help.
Go ahead and mute that real quick. So I won't let that play out. I want to hear this actual news story here because it's a story of animal cruelty from this officer named Ryan Brown. I want to hear more about this happening in Logan County in Kentucky.
Midday. Thank you, Raquel. Breaking news this midday. A Franklin police officer was arrested yesterday after he was served warrants in Logan County. 32-year-old Ryan Brown was charged with 4 counts of second-degree cruelty to animals. The Franklin Police Department indicated that Brown will be immediately suspended when he reports to work again on his next regularly scheduled work day. Brown will remain suspended without pay during the administrative investigation and pending the outcome of the criminal charges against him, according to reports. The department will also do a separate internal investigation. Brown has been employed with the Franklin Police Department for 6 months, previously serving with the Russellville Police Department.
For over
Thank you, Raquel.
Years,
breaking news this midday.
All right, man. All right. So that was an interesting story. Interesting story. Police officer hit with animal cruelty. And he has some warrants out there for him now. So once again, this guy's name is Ryan Brown out of Russellville. He's charged with 4 counts of second-degree animal cruelty. And apparently he was immediately suspended when the reports came in. Immediately. So I'm going to follow this case. He was previously employed with He was employed with the Franklin Police Department for about 6 months, and previously he was serving with the Russellville Police Department, where he currently lives in the county or the particular city. So I want to follow this story. 4 counts of animal cruelty. I wonder which of the animals that they're talking about here. I'm gonna look more into this and give you guys an update on this story as I go along here. So this is actually an update to a story that I've already covered. It's about a Cornelius police officer. This is happening in South Carolina. So this police officer, his name is Erickson Douglas Lee, right, out of South Carolina. Now this guy, he's being arrested for heinous crimes against kids. He was also a church youth leader. Wow. See, I told people there's a problem with these types of crimes when it comes to U.S. law enforcement, but especially law enforcement out of South Carolina. And people, for some reason, they just don't want to take me seriously. Some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why it's like that. I only say that to try to protect kids. But for some reason, people just don't want to hear me out. They just don't want to hear me. I mean, it doesn't matter how many crimes like this are being committed by these police officers and how often that it happens on sheriff's watch, on police chief's watch, the governor's watch, the attorney general's watch. Everyone knows there's a problem with U.S. law enforcement, but especially law enforcement in South Carolina, committing these types of crimes. I mean, it's in the news all the time. But it's almost like people are going out of their way to ignore things. So I want to go over this other article about this guy here. So North Carolina cop held inappropriate parties with alcohol as Fort Mill church volunteer, documents show. A former North Carolina police officer now faces additional charges involving minors in York County after officials from a Fort Mill church called deputies last month. After officials from a Fort Mill church called deputies last month to report the allegations, according to law enforcement and court documents. Erickson Douglas Lee of Charlotte was charged with 4 heinous crimes Tuesday by York County deputies before 7 more charges were added Wednesday, jail and sheriff records show. Sheriff's Office spokesman Trent Ferris said Thursday the 7 new warrants were served against Lee in the York County jail. The allegations are from when Lee was a youth leader volunteer at Morning Star Ministries. Sheriff records show. Morning Star is located off Regent Parkway in northeastern York County, south of the North Carolina state line. So it's in South Carolina, but it's right on the line with North Carolina. Now, Morning Star, that is a very interesting name that they actually picked. I understand the area's name, but I want you to understand something, right? I want you to see something real quick, because I'm gonna put on the tinfoil kufi here for a second. So I'm gonna type in Morning Star, right? So we know what a Morning Star is, right? Morning Star is like a weapon. It's like a mace. You can swing it. Sometimes it's a straight mace, but I want you to see what happens. Type in the word Lucifer, right? We know what Lucifer is. He's devil. What happens when you type in Lucifer Morning Star? Lucifer Morningstar is the fictional name of Lucifer. He's not called Lucifer Morningstar in just one comic verse. He's been called that in paganism for the longest time. Yeah. See, I think that in South Carolina, I've been uncovering a lot of things that were really, really strange about the law enforcement there touching kids. And whenever I got too close, they would start burning me, like going after me personally. Well, now you're starting to see some really, really weird stuff. You know, some of the sheriffs there, I think, are cultists. Some of the people there, I think, there's got to be something wrong there where there's so many police officers engaging in behavior like this. If you go back on my channel, or if you go back on, I mean, if you just Google it, there is a serious problem with the cops and the sheriff's deputies and the troopers in South Carolina touching kids. It's not me just saying that. There's something wrong with that. It's just, I have on to 10 for a Koofy, man. There's something wrong with that. You can't keep having this stuff happen so often, right? I report on this so often. Weird names start popping up. People start covering things up. People start pretending like things didn't even happen. Right here, let me show you how deep this actually goes, right? So everyone talks about how, you know, I'm not saying I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, but everyone's mentioned about how people who are particularly on the liberal side have these little cults where it's almost like satanic, right? And there's child sacrifices, and people cover it up. Just check it out. Sheriff Leon Lott, Democrat. This guy's out of South Carolina, right? Sheriff Leon Lott is a Democrat. Yeah, right here. Democratic Party. Right? Right? Leon Lott, court filer. This guy's been covering up horrible things that happen to children for the longest time. Do you not see a problem there? Again, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. It keeps happening for a reason, man. Like, in one of the warrants, investigators said Lee is accused of third-degree heinous conduct with a minor between December 2020 and June of 2022. Deputy said Lee is accused of committing these acts with the victim under the age who's under the age of 16, and said it allegedly happened 30 times in a 1.5 year period. Wow. Investigators said that around July 22nd of 2022, Lee, who is a 17-year-old victim's youth leader, heard him through non-consensual touching. This person is a boy. Wow. Authorities allege the victim was intoxicated when the incident happened and charged Lee with first-degree assault and battery in connection to it. Lee is also accused of playing inappropriate video that same day for a 17-year-old victim at Lee's home, who investigators said he was a youth leader for. Warrants reveal the same thing happened to at least 3 more victims less than 18 years old at his home from August 2021 until this January in 2023. Investigators said he was their youth leader as well. Wow. According to one of the warrants in December of 2021, Lee allegedly committed heinous acts with the victim who was younger than 14. Who was 14 or older, but younger than 16. Wow. So either 14 or pretty much 15 then. During a time period of August 2021 until this January, investigators said Lee is accused of contributing to the delinquency of that person on 4 different counts by giving them alcohol and telling them to drink it. Channel 9 was able to obtain information showing Lee was a member of Young Special Forces, which is part of Morning Star Ministries. The Fort Mill Church was established in 1995, according to his websites. Young Special Forces? What does that even mean? Young Special... Okay. Morning Star Fellowship Church confirmed Lee was a volunteer at the church and said he was not a current attending member at the time of his arrest and hadn't been associated with the church in several months. They also say that it doesn't appear any of the accusations that happened on church property. The church said they weren't initially suspicious of Lee because of the military and law enforcement career. They said they contacted York County Sheriff's deputies as soon as they became aware of the possible criminal misconduct and said that they are cooperating with law enforcement on the investigation. Wow. So this dude was law enforcement, church youth leader, And on top of that, he was getting engaged in all kind of other things. A former North Carolina police officer now faces additional charges involving minors in York County after officials from a Fort Mill church called deputies last month to report the allegations. Erickson Douglas Lee of Charlotte was charged with 4 heinous crimes Tuesday by York County deputies before 7 more charges were added Wednesday, jail and sheriff records show. Sheriff's Office spokesman Trent Ferris said on Thursday the 7 new warrants were served against Lee in the York County jail. I've already read that before, but I want to go over that so you guys understand what you're facing here. The allegations are from when Lee was a youth leader volunteer at Morningstar Ministries, sheriff records show. Morningstar is located off of Regent Parkway in northeastern York County, south of the North Carolina state line. Wow. And y'all always say I got on the tinfoil kufi, say I'm paranoid. Well, you're starting to see more and more that no, that's not the case. That maybe I got a point here. Maybe. Let's get into this story here. A Maryland Transit Administration police officer has been arrested under federal charges, according to transit authorities. I wonder who was arrested. They didn't even announce who was arrested. I just brought the story up. Nobody's, this is the one thing, right, that I find interesting about police officers. They go out of their way to hide their names, but if you so much as even miss some tax payments, your name and your address and everything is out there about you. Let's see. I thank you for your content and your humanity. Egypt, no last name, says, okay, thank you very much. Much love. Unrequested edit says, what did you think about the homeless man and what happened on the train in New York City by Pastor? I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I want to get into that for sure. I got a lot to say about that. I got a lot to say about that. But I want to finish these stories first. I'm here all night, guys. Let's get into this story here. Massachusetts police officer suspended, guns confiscated following his arrest. Now, this one I want to get into. Stephen Stalzer, the Acton Police Department officer, man, the Acton Jackson over here at Massachusetts Police Department has placed one of his officers on leave and removed firearms from the officer's home following his arrest. Officer Stephen Stalzer of the Acton Police Department was arrested in Stowe on Saturday. District Attorney Marion Ryan's office said Stalzer faces charges of domestic violence and battery and assault and a battery on a pregnant person in connection with allegedly assaulting his wife, who is 5 months pregnant, in their Stowe residence. So this guy, the reason why I wanted to cover him for sure, his wife is 5 months pregnant and he decided to go and beat up on her. What a hero, huh? Blue Lives Matter, is this your man's? Blue Lives Matter. I gotta know, is this your man's? You said it all costs here. Hold on, wait, hold on.
Modernize IT with storage that evolves with you. With built-in AI, you
Hold
can
on.
easily monitor your ecosystem.
I want to make sure that we discuss this hero here, man. I want to discuss this hero.
Intelligent insights.
I want to make sure that we discuss this hero because
And with the ability
I don't
to
want this hero
across clouds.
to go unmentioned.
An Acton police officer has been placed on administrative leave after his arrest. News Center 5 cameras were there as Officer Stephen Stalzer appeared in court today. News first at 4 o'clock. An Acton police officer has been placed on administrative leave after his arrest. News Center 5 cameras were there as Officer Stephen Stalzer appeared in court today. The police department says he was arrested in Stowe over the weekend. The officer's license to carry has been suspended and his badge and service weapon have been taken by Acton police. No further information, including the exact charges he's facing, have been released.
I don't take pleasure in covering stories like this. I really don't, because at the end of the day, you don't want things like this to be true. Mainly because you don't want to just, you don't want that to be true. Mainly because if it is, that means that somebody got beat up, man. You don't want that to be true, right? You want it to be, whereas no, that didn't happen, you know. But the problem with police officers is that you rarely get that kind of luxury. That's the problem with them, man. I'm bring up my tabs again. Storming windows. There we go. All right, cool. Go back over to my last thing. There we go. All right, here we go. Florida police officer. Let's get into this one here. I want to make sure I cover these cases in details. I love covering these cases. This is a Florida police officer out of Kissimmee, Florida, arrested for domestic violence. I want to make sure we cover this case for sure. Or Kissimmee. Or Kissimmee. Make sure I get this right.
New tonight, a Kissimmee police officer is in trouble himself. This happened yesterday in St. Cloud. According to arrest documents, Corey Anthony is charged with battery after a domestic argument turned physical. He was booked into the Osceola County Jail.
All right. Another police officer, man. Corey Anthony. Another police officer busted for domestic violence. I mean, how many police officers are going to just beat up women until we as a country acknowledge the problem? How many more women have to suffer before we acknowledge the problem that police officers are just simply inherently violent towards women? I mean, it just seems to me like that's the case. I could be wrong. I could very well be wrong, but all these black eyes that I keep seeing on all these spouses of police officers and these girlfriends and these baby mamas of police officers, and I don't just mean the men as being perpetrators, even women officers who are with other women tend to be more abusive. There's something about that badge. I just don't know what it is. There's something about that badge. It doesn't matter your skin color. It doesn't matter your sexuality. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's just something about the badge. It just gives a person an inflated sense of power, presence, all that stuff. And once you give that person that badge, they go crazy. They go power drunk. You can't give someone that amount of power, right? For an entire career, or even for a full day, and then think that there won't be people out there who will abuse that power. Because if they didn't, that would go against human nature. Power has to have checks and balances, or else power becomes tyranny in every single case. There is no exception to that. You know it and I know it. So what's up with all the freaking capping, man? Everyone knows the truth. You can't give police officers this kind of power without them becoming violent monsters. And to be honest, I think that's the point. I think that's the point. when you know you're going to enforce things that are against the people's interests, or you're going to take people's guns, or you're going to take people's properties, or you're gonna intentionally trample on people's free speech on people's free speech rights, or you're gonna spy on people, or you're gonna confiscate people's products. You have to get someone who doesn't mind abusing power, because to be a police officer means to abuse citizens. So it comes with territory. So it doesn't come. So it comes at no surprise when you have police officers who beat up on women, because they are unused to being in scenarios where they aren't in complete control. So the first time that a woman shows them any kind of back talk, they behave like this. This is a reflection of someone who has been given too much power and yet hasn't been weaned off of it long enough to go home and be an actual decent human being. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Can't tell me I'm wrong. Boy. Another sheriff's deputy busted for domestic violence, man. Blue Lives Matter. I gotta understand something. Why should any woman feel safe around any law enforcement officer at this point? Seminole County Sheriff's deputy arrested in Decatur on domestic abuse charges. On Monday afternoon, Decatur County Sheriff's officers were dispatched to Silver Lake Road in response to a reported domestic incident. Upon arrival, officers arrested the offender, Seminole County Sheriff's Officer Lieutenant Craig Carr. According to the incident report, Carr had gotten into an argument with his estranged significant other. The argument escalated to physical violence, with Carr allegedly choking the victim at one point. At some point during the confrontation, Carr drew his firearm and held it to his head, contemplating things you shouldn't think about. Let's just say it like that. Before shooting a hole through the floor instead. He was arrested at the scene and he has been charged with aggravated assault, interfering with calls for emergency assistance, and threats and acts of a terroristic variety. As of the writing of this article, he is being held at the Decatur County Jail while awaiting his bond hearing. Following the incident, per the Donaldsonville News, Carr was suspended from his position at the Seminole County Sheriff's Office without pay and had his employment terminated. Wow. Another hero police officer, another hero sheriff's deputy, another hero member of the Blue busted for domestic violence. I gotta say, it goes back to what I always say. When you give police officers, sheriff's deputies, highway patrol officers, and all these scumbags who wear badges, when you give them this amount of power on the job without holding them accountable for anything that they do, when they harm citizens, when they touch women, touch children, all that stuff, what do you think is going to happen when they go home? When they go home, they're going to behave like they're unaccountable jerks and monsters and criminals and terrorists, because that's the kind of power you gave them on the job. How do you expect a person who is used to that kind of deference in court, society? How do you expect a person who every time you criticize them, you get these bootlicking scumbags out here who's just going to defend cops no matter what they do? How do you expect that person to go home and treat their wife well? How do you expect that person to go home and treat their wife well? That's my question. And I did cover the case out of Hopkinson, the person who's asking about the assistant police chief there. I think the deputy police chief there I believe he was a school resource officer who was doing some law and order SVU stuff. Yeah, I covered that case. I even did like an update to it. I did an update that he was going to be arraigned. I covered the initial story and then I did the update on the arraignment date. But back to this story here, you know, still when it comes to U.S. law enforcement, when they're so used to being given deference in every single case, and you have to struggle with so many people to convince them that there's a problem when it comes to U.S. law enforcement being violent towards their significant others, or you get this outright denial of it, or this burying your head in the sand type of mentality. You empower monsters. You empower guys like Craig Carr here. This man is a lieutenant. So if a lieutenant is doing this, what do you think the people underneath him are doing? The same or worse. The same or worse. The same or worse. So we're into another part of the stream here, whereas I want to discuss something special. So I want to let you guys know that the United Nations is in the United States right now, in 6 different U.S. cities, and they're investigating police abuses across 6 different U.S. cities. In the wake of what happened to George Floyd, the UN is investigating police abuse in 6 cities across the U.S., including New York. The UN last month set up a team called Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in Law Enforcement, or EMLER, to probe excessive force used against black people since Floyd's passing in police custody in Minnesota in 2020, according to organizers. The panel will be holding a public meeting Wednesday in New York City at the Malcolm X Shabazz Center at 3940 Broadway. The EMLR team will listen to testimony from victims' family members and other topics, including stop and frisk, racial profiling, and the conditions at Rikers prison, organizers said. Law enforcement personnel, government officials, lawyers, and civil rights groups will also speak at the hearings. It is unclear which families will be represented, but there have been several high-profile passings in police custody, unalivings by the police. Let's just keep it a buck. Police executions of citizens in New York City, including Eric Garner, Sean Bell, Amadou Diallo, and Abner Louima. Garner's chokehold passing, you know, his unaliving, that officer who should be in prison, occurred during an arrest on Staten Island nearly 9 years ago. Former NYPD officer Daniel Pantaleo was fired in 2019 after the department trial found he used excessive force against Garner, who was 43 at the time and was a father. He was a father. You're always asking, where's the black father? Well, there's a black father right there, but you won't defend him. You won't defend him. Sean Bell, he was fatally shot in a hail of 50 bullets fired by undercover NYPD officers as he left his bachelor party at a Queens nightclub in 2006. The officers in Bell's case were found to have violated NYPD protocols, but they have received little to no punishment. The three-member panel includes experts from the U.S., South Africa, and Argentina, and will hold similar hearings in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Chicago, and Minnesota, organizers said. So the UN right now is in the U.S., and they are doing panels. Do you understand that that's causing international attention? This is actually a benefit to us. If you're a foundational Black American, if you are, I like the term foundational Black American, but if you call yourself a freedman Adolf's, whatever. If you are a black descendant of American slaves, all right, if you are a black descendant of an American slave who can trace your lineage, this is a benefit to us. The fact that the UN is putting international pressure, we can now go to President Biden and say, hey, Biden,
does a physical or mental
Biden,
health
we need an anti-black hate crime bill. President Biden, we need an anti-black hate crime bill, because even the UN is saying this stuff. How Russia could really go to the UN and say, hey, you're saying that there's problems with police brutality in the US, but you are condemning us for what's happening in Ukraine. So shouldn't you hold the US to the exact same standard? I mean, isn't human rights abuses human rights abuses? Or are human rights abuses different depending on who it happens to? Interesting. So I want to continue this though. So this actually comes from a while ago. No, I don't want to get into that one. This comes back from February. TikTok says Biden don't care about us. It will go in one ear and out the other. Yeah, of course, because Biden is like a reformed slave master. This is back from February. Hold on, let's see. Unrequested edit says, if the outcome allowed us to receive asylum in another country, where would you go? I don't want to go to another country because my people come from here. We can't just pack up and leave every time we run into white supremacy or even violence. I don't care if you move around in your own country, but don't leave your country. Stay here and fight. Because quiet is kept. This is really our land anyways, but that's a whole different conversation for a different day. Right now, we're into bad cops. But trust me, I want to get into that conversation. Trust me. UN expert, this actually comes from February. That's why I say this. It's actually old now. It's a couple months old. It's come from the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. From the UN website, UN experts call for new approaches to policing in the U.S. following what happened to Keenan Anderson and Tyree Nichols. TikTok says, exactly, I will not run. Unrequested edits, I don't mean that in like a harsh way. Trust me. It's all love. It's just me. I want to stay. I want to stay here and make the enemies hate me. That's fine. I can deal with that. Unrequested edits, we good. Oh, you know that it's all love. Geneva, 10 February 2023. UN experts have expressed grave concern over what happened to Keenan Anderson on 3 January 2023 at the hands of Los Angeles Police Department, at the hands of the LAPD, and Tyree Nichols after he was beaten by police in Memphis, Tennessee on 7 January 2023. Quote, the brutal deaths of Keenan Anderson and Tyree Nichols are more reminders of the urgency to act, end quote, said Yvonne Makgaro, chairperson of the UN International Independent Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in the context of law enforcement. That is a mouthful. I'm glad they came up with an acronym, because that is a mouthful, man. The experts have sought detailed information on both the Anderson and Nichols incidents from the government of the U.S. on the ongoing investigations and regulations on the ongoing investigations and regulations applicable to the use of less lethal weapons, applicable human rights standards. This is vice versa. This is basically, you can tell this is not written by somebody whose first language was English. In both cases, the experts stress that the force used appears to have violated international norms, protecting the right of life and prohibiting torture or other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. So what the UN here is saying is that what the U.S. law enforcement here does, what police do to us here, it violates international human rights standards and international norms. So all the bootlicking scum in this country, all the white supremacists in this country who lie about the treatment of black people and others, right? Even the UN, even other white countries can see whereas the way we're being treated here is inhumane. Do you understand how bad it is when a country like Germany, with their history, when a country like Israel or China or India, all these countries who you claim to be morally superior than, have universally said you are inhumane to your native black population. You treat them as if they're less than human. That's what the UN is saying. Not me. The UN is saying that. It says here, it is also not in line with standards set out under the United Nations Code of Conduct for law enforcement officials and the basic principles of the use of force and firearms by law enforcement officials. So the UN has a code of conduct for law enforcement. Wow. Commentary. The term law enforcement officials, this is under Article 1 of the Code of Conduct for the law enforcement officials for the UN. This is adopted 17 December 1979. So since the latter part of the 70s, going into the 80s, we've had these standards. Think about Rodney King. Think about Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Tyree Nichols, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice. Think about all the names. Sean Bell. They had a code of conduct since the late 70s going to early 80s. And these police officers have been routinely violating the code of conduct set by the United Nations, and yet the U.S. wants to sit on there and lecture China or Russia. Article 1, law enforcement officials should at all times fulfill the duty imposed upon them by law by serving the community and by protecting all persons against illegal acts consistent with the high degree of responsibility required by their profession. Commentary. The term law enforcement officials include all officers of the law, whether appointed or elected, who exercise police powers, especially the powers of arrest or detention. In countries where the police powers are exercised by military authorities, whether uniformed or not, or by state security forces, the definition of law enforcement officials shall be regarded as including officers of such services. Service to the community is intended to include particularly the rendition of services of assistance to those members of the community who, by reason of personal, economic, social, or other emergencies, are in need of immediate aid. This provision is intended to cover not only all violent, predatory, and harmful acts, but extends to the full range of prohibitions under penal statutes. It extends to conduct by persons not capable of incurring criminal liability. Wow. And this is from Article 2. In the performance of their duty, law enforcement officials shall respect and protect human dignity and maintain and uphold the human rights of all persons. commentary. This is gonna be fascinating. I got a comment here from Dana. Kamala Harris went to Ghana and made a complete fool of herself. Yeah, she did. Because her police officers here are not even following what the UN is saying for how cops should act internationally. Let's get deeper here too. So it says commentary. Part A: the human rights in question are identified and protected by national and international law. Among the relevant international instruments are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, the Declaration of the Protection of All Persons from being subjected to torture and other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, the United Nations Declaration on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid, the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, the Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners, and the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations. B. National commentaries to this provision should indicate regional or national provisions identifying and protecting these rights. Article 3. Law enforcement officials may use force only when strictly necessary and to the extent required for the performance of their duty. Only when necessary. That is a United Nations standard. Think about all the cases where we've had cops just shoot people over a hair comb, over a cell phone, over holding a sandwich, over holding their wallet, you name it. And ask yourself, is that consistent with what the UN is saying here? Commentary, Part A. This provision emphasizes that use of force by law enforcement officials should be exceptional. It should be exceptional. Hold on. I want to read this again. This is, I want for everyone who's just coming in, this is the code of conduct for law enforcement officials according to the United Nations. This is a standard that is set for all law enforcement officials who are members, who are part of member nations of the UN. Let's get down to this part here. Article 3. Article 3. I want to get into this part here. Part A. This provision emphasizes that the use of force by law enforcement officials should be exceptional, while it implies that law enforcement officials may be authorized to use force as it is reasonably necessary under the circumstances for the prevention of a crime or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders or suspected offenders. No force going beyond that may be used. Wow. Wow. So think about that. I want to pause there for a second. How many people are shot by police each year? I want to see how many people are shot by cops each year. Let's go over to the news tab here. I want to get some stats. No, I don't want that. Let's see. There we go. 1,000 people annually So it should be exceptional, right? It should be exceptional. It should be exceptional. It should be a rare thing to have this happen. Does it sound rare to you? This is what the UN is saying here, right? The UN is saying this. National law ordinarily restricts the use of force by law enforcement officials in accordance with the principle of proportionality. It is to be understood that such national principles of proportionality are to be respected in the interpretation of this provision. In no case should this provision be interpreted to authorize the use of force, which is disproportionate to the legitimate objective to be achieved. Which basically means if you're saying that you want to defend yourself or just stop a threat, then do that. Don't fire 50 shots at someone leaving their bachelor party, like Sean Bell, basically. Part C. The use of firearms is considered an extreme measure. Every effort should be made to exclude the use of firearms, especially against children. Tamir Rice, anybody? In general, firearms should not be used except for when a suspected offender offers armed resistance or otherwise jeopardizes the lives of others, unless extreme measures are not sufficient to restrain or apprehend the suspected offender. In every instance in which a firearm is discharged, a report should be made promptly to the competent authorities. Wow. Wow. So that is, according to the UN. Let's go deeper here. This is a letter that was sent in May of 2021. Coalition calls for the UN to do an inquiry into U.S. police violence, and they actually responded. Everything that you saw all the way up until this point is how they responded, right? So this is actually signed by all the families, right, of all the people who lost loved ones up until 2021, thanks to U.S. law enforcement. Well, not all of them, but a small fraction of them. Look at all those families. Look at that, man. Look at that, man. All the way back to 1990. 2021. 31 years, man. And all the names in bold right there are all the people that were taken out by cops. Wow. Yeah. The UN responded. The UN responded. They didn't have a choice. I mean, there's no way to respond other than just to act at this point. Joe Biden, we need reparations. We need an anti-black hate crime bill. We need things. We need resources to help fight against this stuff if the government's not going to fight against it. We need to patrol our own neighborhoods. We need money to establish our own neighborhoods. And if people decide to leave out to basically live outside of them, like I would, that's fine. But that's why we also need an anti-black hate crime bill, so that no matter where we are in this land or territories, we have protections. Everyone will know that when you touch a black person, you will go to prison for life. Yeah, I would love for it to be like that. United Nations, UN rights experts gravely concerned over brutal deaths at the hands of U.S. police. Keenan Anderson passed away in Los Angeles after being repeatedly tased by police following a chase resulting from a traffic stop, according to news reports. And Tyree Nichols in Memphis passed away after being severely beaten as he lay on the ground by 5 officers in Memphis, Tennessee, who have since been charged with murder and other offenses. It's amazing. that the UN has standards that our cops haven't been following. The UN has standards. This is from April 27th of 2023. UN to investigate law enforcement abuse in the US. The United Nations has to be sent in to deal with our pigs. Wow. I want to look up a case real quick. Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely. I wanna raise my volume a little bit. I want you guys to hear me real quick when I say what I'm gonna say. Jordan Neely was murdered. And I want to give a shout out to Tariq Nasheed. I want to give you a shout out live, man. Because I like the fact that you and Foundation of Black Americans have kept on top of this guy. I want to give everybody a shout out here. Daniel Penny. This guy here. Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny. All right, Daniel. Daniel Penny. Yep, that's the guy. That's the guy. Daniel Penny. That's him. He's the former Marine who murdered someone. I'm gonna just not miss words. That's what he did. That's what he did. His name is allegedly Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny, yeah, that's him. That's his face. And I want to make sure that people see this guy. I want to make sure people see his face. After what happened to Jordan Neely. Let's see. Actually, Jordan Neely, the man who was killed by a rider's chokehold, was a talented dancer. Jordan Neely, whose subway death was ruled a homicide by New York's medical examiner, remembered as kind and loving. Jordan Neely had a fan club. The 30-year-old Michael Jackson impersonator had a massive following within New York City and beyond, with thousands online admiring his aptitude for dance and creating a Facebook group to share his performances. But on May 3rd, Neely was choked to death on a subway car as he complained about being homeless, hungry, and thirsty. He was confronted by a man, reportedly a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, who placed Neely into a chokehold for several minutes. The man, 24, had not been named by authorities by Thursday evening, and no charges have been filed. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office is investigating. Neely's death was classified by the city's medical examiner on Wednesday as homicide. It was murder. Daniel Penny murdered a man. Daniel Penny murdered a man. Daniel Penny, you are a murderer, sir. You murdered a man. Shout out to Tariq Nasheed, FBA brother. Great reporting. You do a better job than the actual mainstream media. Great job. But we're not done here. I mean, yeah, we've discovered the scumbag here. Don't get me wrong. We discovered the scumbag here. Don't get me wrong. We know who Jordan Neely. We know who Jordan Neely is, and we know who murdered him. The man's name is Daniel Penny. Marines lawyers up over fears he'll be arrested for chokehold death of aggressive and homeless black passenger. You see how they're trying to phrase this? Aggressive and homeless. A Michael Jackson impersonator is aggressive and homeless. Wow. The Marine filmed with Jordan Neely in a chokehold has hired Thomas Kniff. Kniff is a founding partner of Kaiser and Kniff, who specializes in defense. He also ran against Manhattan's Alvin Bragg for DA in 2021. The Marine, who was filmed putting New York City street performer Jordan Neely in a chokehold on a subway car, has hired a rival Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg to represent him. Neely was seen in a video being held in a chokehold by a former Marine on the New York City subway on Monday. That person's name is Daniel Penny. Neely's family has said he suffered from mental illness for years. Witnesses reported Neely was yelling and pacing on an F train on Monday. That was when he was restrained by at least 3 people. For what? He was complaining about being hungry and homeless and thirsty. Okay. Is that a crime? That's why I say, man, we have to really start treating black men like humans. He was expressing human emotions. The man was poor, he was hungry, and he was thirsty because he's poor. Was that a crime? So you choke a man to death, you murder a man because he was desperate. Because he was probably delirious, because when you don't eat anything, when you don't drink a lot, you become delirious. That's why you can, sometimes people who are very hungry, who are very thirsty, they tend to act out. Wow. White supremacy is many things encapsulated in one system, one global system. But one thing that is definitely a part of white supremacy is finding the poorest, hungriest, and thirstiest black man and choking the life out of him. Choking the life out of him. And murdering him. Alvin Bragg needs to charge everyone who was there. Everyone who was there, even the black people who sat around and watched. Everyone. You're all accessories. You all did nothing. You all get charged. Anyone who touched this man, as this murderer Daniel Penny was choking him out, accessory. You get the same amount of time as Daniel Penny. You get life in prison. You help the murderer. You get held accountable just like the murderer. Alvin Bragg, charge everyone in there. Everyone. Even the cameraman. Everybody. A message needs to be sent that you either stop this, you report it, you do something, but you certainly don't help the murderer. Jordan Neely should be alive right now. And the fact that the man who took his life is not behind bars proves that we live under a system of white supremacy. There goes Jordan Neely. People won't see the humanity in a man who's just desperate. People won't see the humanity, the humanity in somebody who's poor. They said he was just loud and pacing. Was he physically hurting anybody? So basically, a man got choked out because he was acting out because he was in a bad he was in a bad situation, but he wasn't physically hurting anybody, right? This is why we need reparations. This is why we need an anti-black hate crime bill. This is why we need to have our own. But stuff like this, it can't continue. And guys, that's gonna be it for me tonight, man. That's all I can say tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys for giving me so much love. I want to do more live shows like this, and I want you guys to be safe out there. Until next.